You're listening to Inside Melbourne, the official podcast of the Melbourne Football Club. Proudly presented by Zurich Insurance, ensuring the things you truly love, like this podcast.
Hey D's fans, welcome to Inside Melbourne. My name is Ben Gibson. I'm out at Casey Fields for a special coaches edition of the podcast. We're going to hear from Richardson a little later on, but firstly, Troy Chaplin, welcome.
G'day, how are you, mate? Thanks for having me.
Very good. I'm going to try and keep a straight face for the next 10 minutes or so, but we'll see how we go. I find coaching quite intriguing, so this is an interesting one. After a training session, you're going to have a little meeting a little later on today. What do you talk about? What's a review like after a main training?
We've probably shortened it. Pre-season, they can be a little bit longer because you're trying to work on your method, but today it'll be just a review of training, anything we may have done differently. And it's Richo's brought it along in terms of we're spending a bit more time on why we do certain things. We don't want to waste any moments in training, so we'll just review our drills. How did they go? Would we change anything differently or do anything differently? Would we add an extra number in, take one out? So that's what this afternoon will be about, and be just a little injury report from Burjo as well. So it's just an opportunity to review before we go away and start planning for our little hit out on Saturday.
And how much preparation goes into planning a session? Because we see all these different drills out there. There's obviously got to be a lot of thought going into that to make sure the boys can get the most out of it.
If you ask me, sometimes too much time. We do spend a little bit of time because we want to make sure that we, as I said, don't waste any drills, but it's more around, okay, this time of the year, we've got a game on the weekend, an internal trial amongst ourselves, and we play next week. We're into the real stuff. So you really want to make sure that we're not wasting any time at all, and we're ready to go round two when it comes around. So a little bit of it has been around our method defensively, some offensive stuff as well. So we want to make sure that we're getting that into the players, and it's trying to get as much work into them as we can and make it as much game-like as possible. So we're probably letting the drills run a little bit longer, not chopping and changing. And the guys have come back in good nick and have been able to do that. So it's exciting times. I know I'm looking forward to getting back into the real stuff now, and no doubt our supporters are looking forward to seeing the boys and how they go too.
Training has looked a little different in the past few weeks. How have you found working in a little group of 7 personally?
No, I've actually enjoyed it. I think there's something in it. Obviously, we can chop and change the groups. We've kept them pretty set the time since the time we've come back, but it just allows you to be a little bit more hands-on and spend a bit more time on the technical side of the game. Generally, if you've got 14 or 15 players, you're trying to run a drill and you can't really coach that much because you want to try and get the reps into them. You've only got a certain amount of time, whereas with the less numbers, you can spend some quality time with them and really slow any work you want to do with them and really coach the technical element to it. So I've enjoyed it. And I don't know, the boys, I think, given the time they had off, they were training by themselves. As soon as they came back and were in a group of 7, the energy lifted. So there's been this real energy about the group ever since we've got back, which has made it a lot easier for us as coaches.
And you're with the defensive group. It's a pretty strong-looking backline at the moment. Do you feel like it's probably as strong as it's been since you've joined the club?
Yeah, look, it's getting tight for spots because what we're trying to do is find a group that functioned really well. So we're not sure what it's going to look like yet because we've got probably 10 guys, 11 guys who are really vying for the 7 spots because generally we take 7 into the team. So it's going to make it really interesting. All the guys have played well in the internal trial as well and are training well as well. So I think the beauty of our list at the moment is we've got 40 blokes who are training. We've only got a couple who are missing out. So it's not just the defenders group, it's the forwards, it's the mids. It's going to be really tight. So it's a healthy thing. And what it does is it drives that competitive element amongst that group. And there's going to be guys who generally play that may miss out. And it's a great position to be in and one that we're looking forward to as coaches to see because we've got young guys who have come on really quickly after having a bit of time off and showed something. So it's exciting times.
Absolutely great luxury to have. A lot of excitement around May and Lever playing together. They're quite different defenders, but do you think they'll complement each other quite well?
Yeah, well, Maisie will play on someone and Jake doesn't. So that's how they complement one another. But no, look, it's exciting because the club got those guys in because it was probably an area that we were lacking and we just haven't seen them play footy together. And now what they've been able to do is do a full pre-season together. Now, granted, we've missed 8 weeks through the COVID-19 situation, but both guys have come back and Jake's come back in incredible nick. We always knew that he was an elite runner, but he came back and testing the other week showed how good he is, and he's doing midfield numbers. So what we've got is a guy who has got the capacity to play 100 minutes or 100% game time and allows other areas of the field to use that rotation up. And we know how competitive Mays is, and that's probably the beauty of both of them. They're extremely competitive footballers. And all footballers are competitive, otherwise you don't play the game. But these two guys play with a chip on their shoulder, and it's exciting because both guys are starting to work out how each other move, how each other play. And they're probably our two best communicators on field in terms of the way we want to set up. So it makes my job easier. It's a luxury to have, and I'm just really looking forward and hoping that we can see them two play a lot of football together, because if they can and get that continuity and cohesiveness together, then who knows? Most of the premiership teams or the successful teams in the past have had two pretty strong pillars in their back line, and I think that we're heading towards that.
Do you think Joel Smith's potentially someone who could also help out down there?
Yeah, look, Joel, unfortunately for Joel, he's had a lot of injuries and it's plagued his career so far. But I think playing as a defender and the role that we're looking to play him in as that deeper defender, it looks after his body a little bit. But I've never seen an athlete capable of what he is in terms of endurance, but the repeat efforts, the speed. And when he's in that group, he adds something different. So we're excited by what Joel can bring, and to his credit, he's had a really good break as well, and he's slotted straight into that group, and he's right in the mix for that game against Carlton next week.
It is a different looking defensive sort of setup to last year. Jay Lockhart round one was pretty impressive. Is he someone who could also take a real lockdown role? Yeah,
definitely. Jay's an interesting sort of character in terms of he doesn't have the name. Like, not many people are aware of him apart from the supporters, obviously, but he's very diligent. He's got a wealth of knowledge around the way we want to play, and he's a leader in his own right. He helps Jake and Maisie in terms of setting things up behind the ball, and sometimes you don't need to be the best player, but you can be that role player, and he's really accepted that. And he was probably one of our better performers right throughout the Marsh series and got rewarded with round one. And we've got real trust in Jay, and who knows? As I said, next week's going to be really competitive for spots, so it's going to come down to how the guys perform on the weekend and see where we go from there.
And one I've enjoyed watching out at training is Trent Rivers. Still a young player, but he's got great skills. He's a penetrating kick. Do you think he's someone who could, at some stage, have an impact?
Yeah, definitely. To Riv's credit, he's just come in and been a sponge, and that's all you want from a young kid. He asks a lot of questions. He wants to know. He wants to learn. And the boys reckon one thing around communication is the listening ability as well. And Riv is just a great listener. So whatever the boys tell him to do, he will do without any questions asked, even if they're wrong at times. So, but he's been brilliant. He's really developing. He's had a great break as well, come back. And I think the thing with Riv is that he's something that we haven't really seen or haven't really had in the past. Like, as you said, he's a penetrating kick, but he's also a powerful runner. And given the shorter games, it could really work to his favour. So we're excited by the potential he's got. And when we see him in there, it'll be exciting, I reckon. I think the supporters wouldn't know too much about him. I can't really think of a comparison off the top of my head, but definitely a penetrating kick that can break lines for us, which is really good. He's competitive defensively.
Yeah, he showed that in the North Melbourne practice game. I thought quite dynamic off halfback.
Yeah, definitely. And that's we've got run there, but he's a different type of run. He's not just your pure just I'm going to run off and get a handball receive all the time. He bobs up in the right spots. A little bit like Salo, bobs up every now and then, but he provides more penetration than what Christian does.
Yeah, exciting for an 18-year-old. There haven't been a lot of main full group sessions since ISO. Are you confident there's been enough to get a bit of continuity before the restart?
I'm more confident in what the boys have been able to do prior to that. Obviously, Burjo has set them up and brought them back in really good condition, which has enabled us to hit the ground running straight away. We haven't wasted any time. We've got straight back into it as soon as we could do full ground and full group training. So, it's an exciting situation to be in because games are so close. Look, have we got enough work in? You just don't know. And every club's going to be in a similar situation. It's sort of turned around really quickly. But I think our guys have done the right amount of work to prepare themselves as best they possibly can to attack the season.
As you touched on, we've got Carlton in just over a week's time. As a coach, a defensive coach, how much time do you put into looking at their side and how we can match up against them?
Yeah, look, I've already had a look at them only because I've had time on my hands. But it's I spend you probably look at the last 2 to 3 games just to get an idea of any trends, and you look at their forwards ahead of the ball. They've got some talent up there, bringing Jack Martin in, and obviously Eddie comes back now. Look, Eddie's getting on in age, but he's still a mercurial player. And then they've got some younger guys, like obviously McGovern's a dangerous player. Casbolt down there as well. Young Cunningham played as a defensive forward against Grimes in their round one. Now, we're talking nine weeks ago, so things may have changed since then, but you certainly get a feel that they're playing a little bit quicker, Carlton. So it's going to challenge us as any team does. But yeah, in terms of watching the opposition, I'll usually watch their last 3 games just to see what they're doing around stoppage, how many forwards they'll play at stoppage, how they're entering the forward line, and potentially how we can attack it from our perspective. So there's a little bit of time goes into it, but that's part and parcel with the job.
We're going to take a break very shortly here. We've got Richo coming up. What's Richo brought to the coaching staff?
Wealth of knowledge and experience. He challenges you a fair bit in terms of why we're doing certain things. That's probably been the biggest change for us this year, is any training or meetings, any education. It sounds simple in terms of why do you do it, but sometimes when you get caught up in how busy the life of AFL is, you can soon forget that, and it just becomes you're just continually turning the wheel. So he's slowed things down for us. We've been doing a lot more reflective pieces on training, where the group's at. Okay, what are we going to educate? Why are we going to do that? What's our game style? Why? So it's just asking little questions like that. But he's also been a sounding board for everybody as well. Like he's been a senior coach. He's been at some great football clubs as well. Experienced different cities, different coaches. So for us, it's just having that wealth of knowledge and experience there to use him as a sounding board, and for him to give advice as well. So we're extremely fortunate to have someone like Richo come on board, and he's had an immediate impact, which has been great.
Fantastic. Thanks for your time, Chappie. Appreciate it.
No worries.
We'll be back with Richo just after this.
Thanks to our co-principal partner and podcast sponsor, Zurich Insurance. For over 100 years, they've been insuring the people and things you truly love. And just like you, they truly love footy, and they truly love the D's.
You're listening to Inside Melbourne. We've had a change of guests, and Alan Richardson has jumped in. Welcome, Richo.
G'bo, good to be here.
It's nice to have you in front of me and not behind me, where you've been scaring us the past 2 weeks, deciding to just bang on the door. Have you enjoyed that?
Yeah, no, I like keeping the staff on their toes. That's part of my job, and you guys looked like you were half asleep in there, so smashing on the wall and frightening the living suitcases out is a good thing, I reckon.
I don't know about that. Always working hard, though. We've got some questions from the outer here. Firstly, from Matt. He wants to know what exactly your role is. So you've been here for a little while now.
Yep. My role is to work closely with the coaches to ensure that we get transfer from the whiteboard. So the way that we want to play, we mirror that in training. We train the way we want to play, obviously, and then game day, same thing, to make sure that we follow through. From a reviewing perspective, that we're really consistent with our messages. Whatever the coach wants, I really drive that message through to make sure we get real synergy from a coaching group. We've got 40-odd players. Now, things have changed a little bit. We don't know what's going to happen with the second-tier competition, but prior to all that happening, I'm obviously referring to COVID-19, we had to make sure we had the same sort of messages flowing down to the Casey team. We're hoping to get some sort of second-tier competition up, and so that'll continue. But, yeah, it's just to make sure that we're really consistent with our messaging. There's an element of trying to improve our coaches as well. Where are the gaps? What are they good at? Where can they improve? To give them feedback. I sit in their reviews and we'll ask them at the back end of it, or initially going in, what are you trying to get out of the meeting, and then give them feedback on what I reckon they got out of the meeting. At times asking some players what they got out of the meeting. It's one thing to teach well. It's more important that they learn well, and that's part of what I do. Work really closely with Goody on ideas, concepts, programming. How do we think we're going? It's certainly, given that I've coached my own team for 6 years, been an assistant coach for a long time, there's a bit of experience there to draw on to support Goody in terms of what he's thinking, and hopefully throw some ideas at him as well.
You touch on that relationship. Are you liking what you've seen from Goody as a senior coach?
Well, I am, but he's very poor on splitting firewood. So yesterday we had a day off, and I've got a little property up at Yea and brought a bit of red gum round to his house. He did expect me to have it split. I said, no, mate, I'm the director of coaching. I don't do everything. I just... Anyway, after 5 minutes of splitting the wood, he had a blister, so that was disappointing. In fact, I made sure I told Jack Viney out there on the training track today to go and ask the coach. He said he was splitting for an hour and a half and got a blister, but no, he's an impressive person with respect to coaching. He's got a great understanding of the game. He has brilliant relationships with the players. I think if he didn't have that latter skill, then last year could have been incredibly awkward. You know, to go into the season with high expectations, to not live up to those expectations, but to see that the spirit and the energy in the group was still so strong when we got back is testament to the fact that he has got really close connection with his players, in particular with his leaders. The way that he's worked through a change of leadership has been really impressive to watch. You know, that's always a big issue at times in footy clubs, and he's handled that brilliantly. He's made some adjustments to the way that we're going to play and the way that he's steered and supported his coaches through a pretty challenging time. We've got some coaches that are not with us anymore, and the way that he's dealt with that has been first class. Game day, I've only seen one. He's a very composed coach. He's looking for ideas. He's looking for suggestions. He doesn't like commentators in the box, which is, you know, he's the only one that can go off his head, and he's made that pretty clear to the boys. So no, it's only early, but he's going really well.
Good signs. Question here from Tim. As an opposition coach, what were your thoughts on Melbourne last year? How did you see Melbourne from a strengths and weaknesses point of view?
Well, yeah, it was interesting. We had Melbourne early, and I can remember sending our opposition scout to watch Melbourne training, and he came back and said it's good that we got the Demons early. And that was a reflection of their midfield, that their midfield had all had surgery and had no continuity of training. Now, we weren't to know that was going to continue. You know, the injuries were going to continue, and that issue of continuity was going to compound. And but yeah, no, we knew that they were in strife in terms of their running power early, so we were blessed to get them early. By the time we played them again, I'd moved on. So I think that was a week after or a couple of weeks after. I was not at the Saints then, but no, that was certainly what we felt about Melbourne early. And that's not the case. So obviously Darren Burgess has come in. I worked with Burjo. Burjo and I joined Kenny Hinkley when Kenny Hinkley got the job at Port Adelaide, and he's as good as I've seen Darren in that space. His ability to motivate players. He's got a great understanding of the science of sport and the science of footy from a conditioning perspective. He's a great storyteller, given where he's been in his own journey, the footy clubs that he's been, whether that be in Australia or overseas. No, he's got our guys in really good shape.
And a question here: as an opposition coach, what sort of Melbourne player are you looking to shut down? Who are the damaging Ds that you need to get on top of?
Oh, gee, well, I'm not going to say that.
Well, we've got a question here from Max Gawn.
Okay.
He asked, why in 2018 did every St Kilda player hit him behind the ball?
Now, look, I will go back to the first one, then I'll get on to Maxi. Anyone who's watched St Kilda Melbourne would know that Jack Steele was a tagger, and we went to Clayton. So the Saints under my time would go to Clayton. His ability to win the ball and to get the ball to his teammates, and at times to be able to break out a stoppage was something that, I mean, I'm not unique there. There's a lot of coaches went after Clayton, particularly on the back of the year that he'd come off. So, I mean, Gawn is hard to stop, but that's going to get into your next question. Yeah. There's a lot of time spent on Max. And so Max, the plan on Max was, if we can't get him away from where we want him to be, and that's generally our kick inside 50, because his ability to mark the ball and stop your offence is the best in the competition, then let's make sure we're putting a bit of heat into him and make it know that every time he runs past someone, he's going to have to work through that. And that was a real focus of ours. I sent all the leaders a text message when I joined the club, looking forward to working with you, exciting times, all that sort of stuff. And my response from Max was, thank Christ you're with us, because now I won't get smashed by everyone for every time I run past someone on the footy field. So, it's he's an outstanding player. He's gonna have to wear that. It won't just be St Kilda. That's par for the course for the good ones.
Now, Patrick wants to know what excites you most about this group.
Well, there are many things. It's as good of inside midfield group. When you think of, arguably the best ruckman in the game at a great age, and I'm not just talking about what he can do at centre bounce and stoppage, but what he does as a ruckman outside. His marking ability is the best in the game. Brayshaw, Oliver Viney back fit again. His start to his season, if you include JLT, along with Christian, has been really impressive. So it looks like he's back to his best, which is really exciting for us. So to then add some outside run, that we did, the guys did, the recruiters did in the trade period with Tomo and Ed, really complements that group. I've already mentioned Christian, but he complements that group as well because of his speed and his power, and he can get out of traffic. We've got a marking defence that excites me. The fact that Lever and May fit and firing and playing together. We haven't seen a lot of that as a Melbourne family, so that's exciting. And it's going to be a forward line that's going to be pretty hard to match up on. It's been an issue for us. We get a lot of entry. Round one's a good example. We beat West Coast on their deck by 10 entries. We keep them to 35, which is the lowest they've had in 2 years. So defensively there was some good stuff, but we didn't make the most of our opportunities. But that will come. It's a young group. Our fans are going to love Cozzy. Yeah. He's a real excitement machine. So we still have a little bit of work to do in terms of making sure that all that comes together, as does every footy club. We're going into round two. But I'm excited by a lot. Now, the other thing I am excited about, I'm excited by the way they've embraced this pre-season and now this second pre-season, which is quite unique, has been challenging by design, and they've embraced that. That's quite exciting. So they've gone out there with an attitude of not to get through whatever it is Simon Goodwin throws at them or Darren Burgess throws at them. They've gone out there with an attitude of how do we get better? Has that come from the disappointment of last year? I don't know. I don't care. All I do know is they've been super impressive, and that's exciting.
A really interesting question here from John. Do the players do much work on their opposite sides? Is that still a thing they're looking to improve on, their left foot or their right foot?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I can understand the question. And the answer is yes. We, if they have time, we want them to get on their preferred leg. There are some players that are really comfortable going on their opposite foot. I did a fair bit of work on this at a previous job, and it's generally those that are not blessed with leg speed have to develop that as a young bloke because they have to get themselves out of trouble.
Your Sam Mitchells.
Yeah, that's right. Those with leg speed and left footers. Left footers generally find a bit more time and space. But those with leg speed tend to have, as a junior, just ran around people. And so they hadn't had to develop the opposite side of their body. But there's no doubt, to see Melshcombe be able to get the ball outside 50 and be able to go roll right or left is a tremendous advantage to our forwards because the defender doesn't know which side to seal. And that's something that we're always working on.
Now, any chance Luke Jackson can play deep forward from Peter? He's a pretty versatile looking player.
So that was from Peter, was it?
Yep.
Yeah, no, Peter, good question. He's got some real versatility. He obviously can play ruck. We think he can play on ball. He's done a bit in our trial stuff as an on baller, and certainly he's done some work as a forward. He's played a fair bit of forward, back in his Colts days over in Perth. So, we expect him to be, if not in the team, knocking on the door, primarily as a forward, pretty early on in the start of this new campaign. He's a massive competitor. He's got a really big vertical leap, so he's going to be hard to defend. Think of who he's going to be playing on. When you play as a tall forward, there's not too many tall young defenders going around. They're generally pretty experienced players. So round one we'll have, I'm not sure whether Marchbank will play, but there'll be Jones, there'll be Wiedering, big blokes that have played a lot of footy, and so you've got to weigh that up in the mix. But the fact that he competes so strongly in the air and on the ground, he loves tackling people for a big bloke. He's got great agility. He's going to be good for our team.
Now, you've been doing a lot of work in the smaller groups with some of the younger players. Dane wants to know what players haven't been spoken about that you think could have a really bright future.
Well, of the other young blokes, we've seen a bit of Jacko, we've seen a bit of Cozzy. But Trent Rivers has been in my group, and he's going well. He's clearly done the work in this period away from the footy club. As I said, it's been a challenging program that Burjo has set them. Certainly the line coaches have also really challenged them in terms of how physical the training has been. Now that we can get combative again at training, and he's shone through, so he's one to watch. One of the other younger fellas that hasn't played a lot of footy is Lockhart. Now he played in round one.
Yeah.
He was quite impressive in round one. He's also been pretty impressive in this campaign. And this bloke's not a young bloke, but he hasn't played a lot of footy, and that's Smithy.
Yeah.
Smithy's also been in that group, and he's quite a freakish athlete that can play on both talls and smalls, and his ability to cover the ground does a lot for our back six and our team defence, and so he's going to be knocking on the door.
Now, Bob's asking a pretty common question at the moment. How's Harley Bennell progressing?
Yeah, Harley's going well. I can understand the question. He certainly has some attributes that our team needs. I mentioned before that we're blessed with as good an inside midfield group as you need to win a premiership. And if we can get that ball into the hands of people like Harley Bennell, given what he offers with his execution, that's going to be good for us. We've had a lot of entries as a footy club for a while now without maximising our entries and being able to put on scoreboard pressure, and that's something that's why we took the risk on Harley. We know that he's had some issues with his body, but the upside with his ball use and his disposal is exceptional, and he's going well. He's joined in everything since we've been back. He'll have a modified program all the way through. When you've had the history he's had for such a long time, it'd be silly not to. And Burjo will make sure that happens. But he's heading the right way.
It'll be exciting to see. A couple more before we wrap up. Which current player would you want to have a shot after the siren to win a game? Got a few nice kicks down there. Your Fritters, Melky, Tommy McDonald. Who would you want the ball in the hands of?
I'm not going to go with a forward. I'm going to go with a midfielder. Jack Viney doesn't miss. Now this is probably more a reflection of the way that Greg Stafford set up our goal kicking program this year, where because you can't put on the pressure that is game day, geez, I better not muck this up because I'm going to cost the team. That pressure is really important, and we can't create that. But he's had these little competitions going where, whilst it might be as insignificant as you got to buy me coffee this week, trust me, these blokes don't like spending money if they don't have to. So Viney doesn't miss. He doesn't miss a running goal. He rarely misses a set shot. So, I would... And you're right. Fritz is an amazing kick, but I'm going to be a bit controversial and go with Jack.
That's good to hear. It's good to see a lot of the guys putting in the extra work too. You see Petrarca and Oliver often just out there well after the session's finished, just putting in those extra set shots. It all makes a difference.
We turned up early, or the coaches here early. We're allowed to be. The players have got to come at their certain times. Track turned up and wanted to have a kick. He wasn't allowed to go out in the ground because of these COVID rules. So he and Clayton grabbed a bag of balls, and we're lucky enough to have another oval out the back and went out and had a kick. It was, you're right, it's very impressive.
Now, one last one from Connor. Bit of a hard one to answer, but where do you think the D's will finish this year? Is there a bit of hope for the supporters that we could be rocketing back up the ladder?
It's always hard to tell you where we're going to finish because there's 18 clubs wanting to finish as high as they can to give themselves an opportunity to win a flag. We are no different. We have the potential to finish high on the ladder. That means we qualify. There's no doubt about that. There's extraordinary talent within this group. And to pinch a line from a coach I used to work with, Lee Matthews, or play under, we'll get what we deserve. So if we continue to work as a team and give our talent a chance through caring for each other and playing for each other and playing the right way, then we'll get what we're after.
Thanks for your time, Richo. Appreciate the insight.
Good on you, Gibbo.
This has been Inside Melbourne, proudly brought to you by Zurich.